Yeah. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the second day of PDF event. I hope you're enjoying the sessions. And during this session, we will be talking about social media intelligence as a tool of repression and how to regulate for the protection of human rights. The session aims to increase awareness of this of social media intelligence and expose how governments and private companies are deploying this extremely intrusive technology to target human rights defenders, journalists, and others. We'll also look in this session on how to understand the gaps of adequate regulation and legislative frameworks governing the use of social media intelligence, and aim to inspire participants' view to identify the opportunities for advocacy to ensure rights-based approach to digital initiatives. And during the session, we will have with us Josie. Josie works as advocacy officer at Privacy International. She also works on research and advocacy on authoritarian tech. And also we'll have with us Lina Palacios from Colombia. She is a researcher at a Charisma Foundation. She focuses on human rights for digital technologies and the use of SOCMINT. So welcome, Josie and Lina. I am also, I will be with you moderating the session. I am Abed Qataya from Lebanon. I work with SMEX as a media program manager. SMEX is a digital rights organization that works to enhance digital rights across the WANA region. So, Josie, let me start with you. I guess you will have to present us like a presentation on the use of social media intelligence. And then we'll go to Lina. And please, everyone, whenever you have a question, either drop it in the chat here. We will open the room for questions after like each presentation, if you have like relevant questions to the presentation itself, or at the end of the session, and at the end of the session. So please, Josie, if you can like start presenting and telling us about a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Abed. Just allow me quickly to share my screen, please.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, I can see.
Amazing. Okay,
yeah,
in that case, I will start.
Please, before you proceed, Josie, let me tell the attendees that there is a translation. You can visit the Zoom link, the Iman that shared in the chat box to hear us in Arabic. So thank you. Please, Josie, it's yours.
Thank you, Abed, and thank you for everybody who's attending today as well, and particularly to Hamle for their work in organizing this incredibly important forum. So in this session today, we will be discussing social media intelligence gathering and human rights. As Abed already said, my name is Josie Tim, and I'm an advocacy officer at Privacy International. We are a London-based charity campaigning against government and corporate abuses of technology and data around the world. So I'm going to begin in the presentation. I'm going to address the following points that you can see here, beginning with the question, what is SOCMINT actually? What does that mean? So SOCMINT, or social media intelligence, refers to techniques and technologies that allow companies or governments to monitor social media networking sites, for example, X, formerly Twitter or Facebook. And SOCMINT is a form of surveillance which is increasingly used by governments and also by non-state actors. By the way, this point here about no clear legal basis. Yes?
Josie, your voice is a little bit glitchy, so I don't know what happened.
Sorry,
yeah,
can you hear me?
Better now. It's better, way better. So I think you need to stay a little bit closer to the laptop.
Okay. Yeah, just tell me if you can't hear me again.
Yes.
So SOCMINT includes monitoring of content posted on social media, messages, photos, other data generated when somebody uses social media, And the information involves person-to-person, person-to-group, and group-to-group interactions that are both private and public. And I'm just going to look now at some of the methods of SOCMINT. So this is not exhaustive, but some of the methods of analysing social media network sites might include the following. So manually reviewing content as it's posted, reviewing the results of searches or queries of users, reviewing the activities or types of content that users are posting, what's known as scraping or extracting the content of a web page. So all the data on the social media platform, including the content that you post, as well as the content that you like or share, and then drawing conclusions about your behavior based upon this information. And then you can see some other examples also on the screen. I'm not going to go through all of them, but also facial recognition, for example.
Yeah, Josie. So your voice is not clear again. Yeah, I don't know what's happening. So.
Sorry, Abed. Apologies, everybody. I'm not sure why.
No.
Can you hear me now?
It's way better now, but when you keep talking, it starts to get glitchy.
Okay.
So yeah, please proceed.
I will talk. Yeah, thanks. I'll talk slowly. So SOCMINT may include tools to collect, retain, and analyze a vast range of social media data and interpret that data into trends and analysis. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the key elements of what tools exist in the international legal framework when it comes to SOCMINT and privacy. So the right to privacy is a fundamental human right. In terms of international human rights treaties, the main norm related to privacy and data protection is Article 17 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights that you can see here. The right to privacy is also an enabling right that permits the enjoyment of other human rights, including the right to freedom of expression, which is Article 19 of the ICCPR, and the right to political participation and to peaceful assembly. And within the international legal framework, other than the Covenant, of course, the right to privacy is also enshrined in regional human rights instruments, as we have here listed on the screen. I won't go through them all, but you can see some examples. And so then when it comes also to data protection regulation, the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, is of course important, but it's also worth bearing in mind that the Council of Europe's 108th Convention on the Protection of Personal Data, which is commonly known as Convention 108, is also a treaty with an international scope. So in the SWANA region, Israel, Turkey, Tunisia, and Morocco are officially party to the Convention 108. They are signatories. And then, of course, there are national data protection laws as well. And within the majority of the countries in the SWANA region, countries have their own national data protection legislation, with the exception of Syria, Libya, Sudan, Afghanistan, whilst also Iraq, Jordan, the UAE, and Pakistan have only draft legislation in place at the moment. So that legislative process to regulate is ongoing in those countries. Can you hear me? I'm just checking.
Yes, but not super clear.
Okay, I apologize. I'm not sure how to change. I will try to talk slowly. So I'm going to also just address quickly some of the common data protection principles that are seen across the world in data protection regimes around the world. Now, the types of data that can be collected through SOCMINT surveillance include data that's recognized as special categories of protected data that should require heightened safeguards according to these commonly recognized principles and data protection regimes. So the categories of especially sensitive data are here on the screen. Excuse me. So for example, posting on social media, tweets can reveal location data, individual opinions, including political opinions, as well as information about a person's preferences, sexuality, their name, photographs, religious views, and also physical and mental health of users, social media users. And social media content can also reveal this type of data about their friends or even their family members. So much of the data that is collected as part of SOCMINT surveillance practices would fall within one of the categories that you can see here that is especially sensitive. And so it should be subjected to heightened safeguards in order to comply with commonly recognized principles that we saw on the previous slide. Now, the use of SOCMINT can pose a serious threat to our rights to the freedom of expression, our fundamental right to freedom of expression. For example, the use of SOCMINT can cause a person to self-censor and avoid using certain words online that, or avoid interacting with certain people or organizations that they fear may be subject to SOCMINT surveillance by authorities. And this is known as the chilling effect. And it affects the person who is targeted as well as the people within their networks, potentially their family and friends. So undermining them the right to freedom of expression on a potentially huge scale. An example of SOCMINT contributing to creating a chilling effect was alleged in the legal case Raza versus the City of New York, which was filed by the American Civil Liberties Union, who alleged that the New York Police Department, NYPD, was systematically gathering intelligence on Muslim communities, and that part of the surveillance involved SOCMINT. And a chilling effect in this case was alleged, whereby the advertisement of youth group events for Muslim youth in New York City was discouraged due to the fear of NYPD surveillance as part of their Muslim surveillance program. So that's just one example. And now I'm going to give a few more brief case study examples of repressive use of SOCMINT surveillance around the world. Now, unfortunately, there are numerous examples of this, and I will not be able to address them all, including examples of people who had been sentenced to death using evidence gained via SOCMINT surveillance. But for now, I will just begin with the USA very quickly. In the USA, the company Zero Fox was criticized when a report that they'd shared with officials in the city of Baltimore was released. So in this report, the company showcased how its own social media monitoring tool could monitor the riots following the funeral of Freddie Gray. And in the report identified two leading figures of the Black Lives Matter movement, the civil rights movement, as quote-unquote threat actors. And the report qualified these two people as physical threats. So that is one example. I'm going to move on quickly now to Thailand, where there is a second example of SOCMINT surveillance. In Thailand, there is a technology crime suppression division, which has a 30-person team scanning social media for lèse-majesté crimes, which means speaking ill of the monarchy. Any content online that can be perceived to speak ill of the monarchy. But it also encourages its citizens to report on each other for lèse-majesté content. So in particular, in Thailand, young people are being targeted through a cyber scout program, whereby participants are rewarded for reporting on other people who have posted content on social media that is perceived as reflecting badly upon Thailand's monarchy. And very sadly, in January this year, in 2024, 30-year-old Mongkol Therakot was sentenced to 50 years in prison for comments that he posted 3 years ago on Facebook that were deemed to have defamed the monarchy. And this is the highest ever sentence handed down under the country's lèse-majesté law. And then, of course, Palestine. Now, I'm sure that Abed, you may be able to speak in a little bit more detail potentially later in this session about the use of SOCMINT in the Palestine context or in the war more specifically. But I want to take the opportunity to highlight some important examples, particularly that Hamle have reported, and again, recognize the important work and research that Hamle have been conducting on these issues. So as we know, the Arab Spring made platforms like Facebook and other social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, integral to widespread protests across the region, including in Palestine, and to the exercise of many fundamental human rights, obviously, such as freedom of expression, opinion, peaceful assembly. And in turn, the Israeli military intelligence, Hamle have reported, developed more invasive ways of monitoring Palestinian digital spaces, including predictive policing algorithms and social media scraping bots that pinpoint and flag supposedly incendiary content. So Hamle have also reported that Israel's military relied on passive and active social media monitoring to police Palestinian digital spheres. Now, passive surveillance utilizes social media scraping tools that I already spoke about, which comb through Palestinian content online, increasingly using artificial intelligence to analyze data and identify content that is deemed to be criminal, and reportedly predict which users are likely to violate Israeli laws and regulations. And in 2023, the head of Israel's security services was reported to have said that artificial intelligence is a, quote, co-pilot in carrying out Israeli Defense Force operations. Active surveillance, on the other hand, entails using generative artificial intelligence to create fake profiles which spread disinformation, propaganda, and software that may be able to hack into private accounts. As well as these reports, Hamle have further reported that at the beginning of 2023, National Security Minister established a special task force to combat incitement and to monitor social media content critical of the policies of Israeli authorities. And also that based upon this work, 22 cases of criminal investigations have so far been opened, and 18 people have been arrested, specifically on the pretext of incitement via social media platforms. Prior to these reports, Al-Shabaka have also found in a similar vein that there was extensive use of SOCMINT surveillance by Israeli authorities, and that specifically Israel has arrested around 800 Palestinians because of their posts on social media, particularly on Facebook, due to a program that monitors Facebook media accounts and looks for specific words to search accounts also that have posted photographs of Palestinian people recently killed or imprisoned by Israeli authorities. And in this policy brief that shared those reports, Al-Shabaka reported also, that this system identifies suspects based on a prediction of violence rather than any actual attack or any explicit threat of an attack itself. And one such specific example is a case that involved the arrest and detention of a 15-year-old teenage girl who simply posted on Facebook a status that said, "Forgive me." So as these very concerning examples demonstrate, as civil society representatives, advocates, activists, and citizens, the use of social media intelligence, surveillance, the use of SOCMINT by governments and by corporate actors presents an increasing infringement upon our collective ability to fully enjoy our human rights, and threatens to severely stifle civic spaces. So it thus presents a key challenge in how to contend with this, how to contend with SOCMINT, how to conduct advocacy, and how to preserve and uphold these human rights in spite of this, this pervasive surveillance technology, this technique being deployed around the world. So Privacy International, we have compiled a couple of just practical recommendations. Firstly, you can see on this slide in terms of what to think about as civil society actors, what to think about as activists in our day-to-day lives when it comes to contending with the use of SOCMINT, particularly by law enforcement. And so here are some tips. These are with specific regards to protests, but they can be applied actually in many different contexts. So, for example, if your location settings are turned on for your social media platforms or for your camera or photo applications on your phone, and then you post online, authorities may be able to gain access to your location data. So consider turning off these location settings on platforms you'll be using if you are posting in sensitive contexts. If you do decide to share images on social media, of course, refrain from tagging other individuals without their consent. You know, this could create a trail of data that authorities or police or other actors may use. And also, if you want to upload images to social media accounts, consider removing the EXIF data beforehand, the metadata associated with your images, because this can reveal information such as the location, the time, and even the device that you were using. And of course, when you are filming your surroundings, just be careful, mindful that footage can also be used for geolocation. So ultimately, we need an urgent reckoning by governments as to the need and justification for collecting this data in this manner. And legislators and regulators really must step up around the world in order to ensure that social media monitoring, to the extent that it is permissible, is practiced within an extremely robust framework that fully respects privacy, freedom of expression, and all of our fundamental human rights. And so Privacy International has raised some of these concerns in a variety of fora internationally, including, before United Nations mechanisms, at national levels, before parliaments and legislatures, and also to oversight bodies of police. And we would encourage you to consider doing the same where you see good opportunity to do so. And I'm just going to leave it there for now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Josie, very much for that presentation. I guess now we have like a better understanding for the SOCMINT. Josie, I have a question for you before moving to Lena. Are you aware or do you think of any good uses for this technology, for the SOCMINT?
Good uses for SOCMINT technology?
Yeah.
It's a good question, Abed. I mean, I think like any tool, unfortunately with SOCMINT in particular, what we're observing in practice is a lot of repressive use of the technology as a surveillance tool. However, I think, in a hypothetical world where it was being used for better ends, and I'm sure that there are instances of this as well around the world, if it's being used within a framework that's subject to like really strong regulation, and it's not being used in a blanket way, but in a way that is accountable, that is monitored, then, in very specific circumstances, I think maybe like to fight some extreme crimes, then it could considerably be permissible. But I would say for it, the pervasive trend that we are seeing right now is it's being misused, and I think that's the primary concern. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Josie. And please, everyone, if you have any questions, we can have room for the questions at the end of the session. Moving to you, Lena. I guess you have like a unique experience with the assessment you will be telling us about. So the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Abed. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you having this conversation. I'm going to share my screen for a moment so you can see a little presentation that I made. First of all, I want to know if my audio is clear. Can you confirm that, please?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk to you about the case of Colombia. So, as Abed said, my name is Lina Palacios. I work as a researcher in Charisma Foundation. That is a civil society organization in Colombia that works to protect and promote digital and human rights in the use of digital technologies by constructing or building social justice. So we run on research in 2022 that was launched in 2023. This research is called When the State Watches Over, Cyber Patrolling and OSINT in Colombia. And as you can look in the title, we did a research about SOCMINT as a specific activity, but we did a research about open source intelligence that is like a more bigger activity to make intelligence in open sources on the internet. So I'm going to start by telling you about the context of the research. So in 2021, there was a national strike in Colombia that consisted of a series of multifactorial protests triggered by the announcement of a tax reform bill proposed by the former president, Iván Duque. So there were a lot of reasons why these protests happened, but this one was the one that started it all. But the national strike was related to other protests that happened in 2019 and 2020 that also culminated in multiple allegations of police violence. So during this period, I'm talking about from April to June of 2021, there were reports of homicidal violence, disappearance, eye injuries, personal injuries, torture, and sexual violence, allegedly by the national police. So as I told you, everything started because of this bill proposed by the government, but then the protests were about the repression that the state was doing over the people that was manifesting themselves in the streets. Because of this situation and the allegations of human rights violations that were happening, the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights did a visit in Colombia in June of 2021, and they published a report where they received all the allegations, and they did several recommendations to the Colombian state about how to guarantee human rights in a context of big protests that like the ones that were happening for that time. So there are a lot of recommendations about, torture, disappearance, homicidal violence, but there is like a chapter about how the internet was important in this national strike because we were talking of the year after the COVID-19 pandemic. So everything was different, and there were different types and different forms to protest. And this was like a time when this was so visible. So the IACHR received information from the state, from the Colombian state, that reported 21,675 hours of cyber patrolling to combat digital terrorism activities and identify fake news. This was problematic for so many reasons, but I'm going to start for the start. So when we're talking about 21,675 hours and you change that to years, we're talking about 2 years of cyber patrolling. But how this could happen if the national strike only lasts like two months and a few days more. So what happened with the OSINT software and this kind of surveil technologies is that they automatize everything and the activities that a person could make manually. And they, as Josie was telling you about, they have the capacity to collect information in bigger ways that we cannot even understand so easily. So yeah, they did this, and they did this with the motivation or the reason to combat digital terrorism, even though digital terrorism is not like a legal term. It's not a concept that has been developed by a law or anything in Colombia. And they say that they were trying to identify fake news, but what they did instead was that the social media of the state and the police and the defense ministry they were publishing or reposting posts that people made about police violence, and they target that as fake or true. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights say that this was not competence of the state, and this was against the freedom of expression online. But this not stop in here, because we had like suspects about that they were using the information collected by cyber patrolling to eventually prosecute people by different charges. And what was special in this time frame is that in Colombia before 2021, it was like expressively forbidden to prosecute people that were doing things in protest for charges related to terrorism. But in 2021, the national prosecutor changed like all the criminal policy of the prosecutor's office, and they established a way to prosecute people charging them with charges of terrorism because of things that they were doing in protest. So there is a lot of people that right now is expecting to a decision of a court in their cases. Just a few days ago, we found out that there are people that has already been sent to jail, for example, for terrorism, and in the prosecute process, as proofs, prosecutor's office were sending material of social media. So effectively, they were doing OSINT, they were doing SOCMINT, and this was serving as proofs in front of a judge. We found in our research a lot of things. In the first, cyber patrol or cyber patrolling is the legal name for what is technically known as open source intelligence. So as I told you before, open source intelligence is like when they collect information of all open sources in the internet, such as websites, such as social media, such as, I know, Google and these sites where we look out for information. We tracked contracts that prove the acquisition of OSINT software by state entities, and we found out that there is just a few companies that develop this kind of software and that they are buying this kind of software to Colombian state. So we found companies from Israel and from Spain, and they contract directly, even though this is not like the general rule in Colombian law to buy anything for the state. We found serious transparency problems because they always buy this kind of software or this kind of technologies, telling or motivating that in national security, counterterrorism, or defense of the sovereignty. So they block every information around the tool, the specific technological tool, and all the process to buy that. OSINT poses privacy risks, of course. There are two big risks. The first one is that this can end in doing massive surveillance that has a really disproportionate impact in human rights, and this can be working to do profiling that in Colombia has terrible precedents. But also, as Josie told us, it generates a chilling effect on freedom of expression. So people, when they know they're being surveilled, they start acting differently, and it has been proven that social media is really important nowadays to protest online. We did a series of recommendations to the state, to the companies, and to the Congress, but today I'm not going to talk to you about the recommendations that we did, because we also did 8 tips to protect yourself against profiling with open source intelligence that I think is really valuable in this space and that I want to share with you. So the first one is to evaluate the sensitivity of your post on social networks, because shared information and associated data such as location, type of device, username, date and time of publication, among others, can be collected for use by the state, private companies, and even criminal organizations. So please do not forget that with OSINT tools, you can cross-reference information from different social networks and databases. So for this reason and for this capacity, it's so important that you always evaluate the sensitivity of your posts on social networks. The second one is to protect your privacy when surfing the internet. So we recommend to use Tor or a VPN, that is a virtual private network that can protect like this metadata that you are always having when you surf the internet. We recommend RiseUp VPN or SizePhone. And the use of these both tools will minimize the location and identity information recorded by internet providers that can be used by OSINT systems.
Yeah.
The third one is to protect your anonymity. It's so important that you always protect this when you are surfing the internet. Anonymity in here is especially protected when used for purposes related to the rights to freedom of expression, participation, assembly, and protest. And this is protected also by different international standards. Use anonymous profiles not related to you, so you must disconnect from your personal email, your accounts with your name, or your cell phone number. And if you consider that your post may generate a risk to your integrity, or that you can generate a risk for your acquaintances or your friends, you must start using anonymous profile, and we advise you to use it only through a VPN or Tor. The fourth one is to protect the information of the places you frequent, because sometimes we are not so conscious about the things that a photo or a video, like the information that these can give to people that are making OSINT or SOCMINT or do profiling on the internet. So keep in mind that nothing like to being conscious about the location and the things that you can be telling when you post something. So for example, if I take a photo and I am in a public space that has like an address or has like a monument and something that is easy to identify, you should be really aware of this. Also consider posting about activities you have participated in when they are over, and only if you do not frequent this place. Because, well, there are a lot of risks if you do that. If you are, for example, in a protest and you do a live, well, and someone is following you, this person will know where you are in the exact moment. The fifth one is to not to talk to strangers. This may sound funny, but OSINT software often uses fake accounts to infiltrate groups on social networks or to access information that is restricted on private profiles. So before adding an unknown profile or included it in a group, for example, in a group of Telegram or Facebook, check whether it is trustworthy and try to ascertain the authenticity of the profile. If you cannot do that, it's better that you do not accept this profile or this person. The sixth one is keep your communications encrypted. So there are a lot of applications. There are like messaging apps that uses encrypted information, so this cannot be taken away from third people. So we recommend also that if you want to call or send a text message, these applications are the best option to do it privately. And please do not use them, the cellular or the telephone network or text messages, such as, well, in Colombia, these are called SMS, because these are not encrypted. So the state or anyone that have the tools to intercept your communication, well, they might do it. The seventh one is to protect the image and identity of others. So when capturing and posting images or videos, prevent others around you from being identified. So we recommend that you can use applications such as Obscura or Signal that allow you to anonymize third parties by blurring distinctive features. So this is something that you can do. And the last but not least, the eighth one is to modify or delete photo metadata before publishing. So when you post a photo or a video, this metadata can give information about the day it was taken, the location where it was taken, the device that took the photo. So metadata is this all additional information, such as the ones that I have already told you. And what you can do to prevent this is that you can take a screenshot and share it instead of the original image, or you can also send it first by WhatsApp, because this removes the metadata, and then you can publish it. Of course, this is going to minimize the resolution, but it will be good for your security and to protect yourself. To manage the metadata of your photos, you can also use tools like Scramble, Xhive, and Xhive Cleaner. So, well, that's all of my presentation. I don't know if you may have any questions, but again, thank you for attention and for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Lena, and everyone. Please throw your questions in the chat box, as mentioned before. We still have a little bit of time. Lena, I have a question for you. Do you think that there is any tool to automatically remove the metadata from our images, or do you think that it is doable on our phones, for example, or we have to do it manually?
Yes, there are apps that can help you to do it manually, but you have to download the app and to do it by yourself. So this is what it is recommended, because even though if it can, I don't know if there exists, I think they do not, but even though if an app that do it automatically, it may happen that this app keep the information of your metadata, and this can be dangerous too. So it is better to do it manually.
So I have also another question for you. What did happen after revealing the information of that the states or the authorities are seizing the users' data on social media? Did anything happen, or did anything change in terms of policies, regulations in Colombia?
Well, in this moment, we are trying from the civil society to promote a bill about protests, and we want them to include the uses of technologies, because we know they are using them and they are doing it outside the law, because the law does not exist.
So they are still using them, right?
They are still using them, yes, and they do it because these things are not regulated. So as from our work, we are trying that this can be regulated by the Congress, and that in this way we can have guarantees by the use and transparency standards that we can use to control and do citizen controlship about the uses of this.
So you're still now in the process of advocating against the
Yes, we are.
Yeah, good luck. And actually, yeah, so thank you, Lena, again. Actually, in our region, what we see is more than social media intelligence. What we see is we believe that, as you both mentioned, that there are many Israeli tools that have been developed and being used by different governments around the world, and even non-government actors. In our region, we've witnessed a lot of surveillance attacks, also kind of toxin, and a lot of tactics to make users to make self-censorship on their speech online, and also to hide from the social media. So, but let me make it clear that should not fear the social media intelligence, right? Because we, as activists, we still use the social media to express our minds, to also advocate for our cases and cause also. So what do you suggest in such case? I believe that Alina already shared some tactics, but I would love to hear from you also, Josephine, on how to use the social media without being afraid from the social media intelligence.
Yeah, thank you, Abed. I think you raise an incredibly important point, because obviously, as much as these digital spaces are like increasingly subject to this kind and other kinds of surveillance, they are at the same time spaces in which have been critical, for actually exercising human rights and promoting them, and like having discussions, dissenting viewpoints, organizing, calling for change, and I think they are really, really critical spaces to, for all of these purposes, and to remain in. So you're right that, we shouldn't be scared away from them entirely. I think it's, there's not obviously an easy answer. It's complex and it's difficult to navigate these new forms of intelligence, but I think as a first step, what we're doing here, having these kinds of conversations and public education, educating ourselves and raising awareness is a really important step to take, and as civil society actors to kind of share tools, knowledge, techniques with each other on how we can remain and operate in these spaces but safely. Maybe not everybody can safely. I think where we can, as Lena said, apply tips or take steps in order to protect our privacy and protect our personal safety online, I think then this is really important. But Abed, it would be good to hear from you and also Lena about your respective experiences at SOCMINT and Charisma on this point. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Lena, would you go first?
No, you go. Okay. I have already talked a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. So let me I don't know if you agree, but I see like the platforms, they hold a lot of responsibility when it comes to protect their users' safety and data by reducing the amount of metadata collected on their users. So by doing so, I think they are organically reducing the amount of risk, and they are organically reducing the amount of data and metadata collected by other entities or third parties or any other like cookies or whatever on their users. And we've seen in our region how the Israeli are leveraging the metadata of WhatsApp, for example, to target like specific targets, and not, unfortunately, they're not specific targets, but they were targeting many civilians, and also many were dead because of the use of AI that is fed by metadata generated by WhatsApp. So if you are, I don't know, if you are like a member of a WhatsApp group and someone is potential target by the AI, the Israeli AI, would be targeted as well. So in addition to that, also like many social media platforms, they require a lot of information that are not needed to run the service. For example, I mean, why would you have access to my contacts, to my list of contacts? I would like decide myself who to add on my list and who to add on my friend list, as on Facebook, on Twitter, and so on. So the platforms, we should make the platforms also accountable for the data they collect, and also that's why we do like policy advocacy at SMAX, Hamli, and like the coalitions and the networks that we are part of. So we do a lot of policy advocacy to make to hold the platforms accountable, and also to make strategic changes, let me say, when it comes to the data collected on users. Also for moderation, because we know that social media intelligence is used by the algorithm itself to execute the content moderation and also to over moderate like specific content, and we've issued like a lot of articles and reports on that with Hamli and also with different partners and networks in the region. So yeah, this is what I think of this issue, and yeah, I would love to hear from the attendees who are with us here if they have any ideas or if you have any question also, that would be great because we still have a few minutes. I've read like something funny, but this is very true comment by Nasir. He said that the one good use of the social media intelligence is that to market you products that you don't really need. So here we're talking about the algorithm and the targeting you with ads based on your interests, as they say, and it happens a lot for, I think, for a lot of us here.
Yeah, it actually made me think about Nasser is right that we can't forget in this conversation also that there are private actors involved in this space and in this kind of surveillance in ways, and so they also have a responsibility, and governments also should be regulating kind of that involvement and any partnerships or like contractual behavior that they have with private actors in a careful way. And I think, Charisma, you came across this issue also in Colombia. Role of responsibility of corporations.
Yes, Lynn.
I lost just a little bit. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to tell that I really agree with you. Like from this side, like when you're working in a civil society organization, this process of policy advocacy are really important. But also it's really difficult because they are using these kind of tools and technologies, but when you go and talk to them or go to the Congress and talk to them, you know that they do not understand all of this. So they are using it. They are violating human rights with this, but when you try to talk to them, it's like, no, there is no technical acknowledgement like enough. So it's a really difficult process. So that's why when from Charisma, when we do these kind of researches, we always do recommendations to the state and how they should like what kind of policies they should be making, but also as long as we understand that this should not be something that people must do. I mean, it's not their obligation, and it's the state that should be guaranteeing their rights. Well, it is important to us to give tools to the people so they can protect themselves, because in this kind of context, it's the only thing left to do. So it's not the ideal, but I think it's what's happening and what happens when we are talking about technologies, because trusting in the policies that are really slow, well, it's not the best way, I think.
Yeah, I got you, Lina. It also depends on the regional context. For example, in our region, sometimes we prefer they do not pass a law, because whenever they pass a law, they use it to suppress and also to oppress voices online, instead of, for example, like the cybercrimes laws are being used for repressing the speech online, instead of like really fighting the real cybercrimes online. So this is something that is a trend in our region, and they use these laws. For example, data protection laws also are being used for like different cases and incidents to summon and also to express pressure on activists and journalists. So yeah, so it depends on the context. I think I don't know if we have any question. I'm checking the chat box, but I think we got. So yeah, thank you, Josephine, and thank you, Lina. And please, everyone, I think Hamli will share later the session link on YouTube, so you can feel free to share the link with any of your colleagues and friends. And thank you, and have a nice evening here in our region, and have a nice day in different countries.
Thank you so much, Javier. Thank you, Josie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.